Avadhuta Gita. Avadhuta Gita. There is a text that comes to us across roughly 12 centuries, attributed to a figure named Dattatreya, a name that in itself carries the weight of legend more than biography. Tradition places him somewhere in the 9th or 10th century of the Common Era, a period when Indian spiritual life was caught between the hardening of ritual orthodoxy on one side and the fragmenting complexity of Buddhist scholasticism on the other. Into that moment came a voice that refused to negotiate with either. The Avadhuta Gita, which means the Song of the Unbound, is not a gradual teaching. It does not offer a path so much as it insists that the ground beneath every path was always already what the seeker was looking for. The word Avadhuta points to one who has shaken everything off, all categories, all identities, all the careful structures the mind builds around itself. The text as it has come down to us has 8 chapters, called patalas, of which the first is by far the longest and the most philosophically concentrated. Whether Dattatreya was a single historical person or a name gathered around a teaching function, the text itself does not require an author. It requires a listener. And so, without further ceremony, here is the Song of the Unbound. By the grace of the Lord alone, the desire for non-duality arises in men, providing protection from the great fear. How shall I bow to that which is formless, unmoving, and auspicious? How shall I salute the one who has filled the entire universe with himself, through himself, in himself? The universe, composed of the 5 elements, is like the water in a mirage. To whom then shall I bow? I am the one, the stainless one. All is the self alone. There is no difference and no non-difference. Is there a void? Is there a fullness? I cannot say. I am the pure reality. The self is all-pervading, unmoving, and peaceful. How then can I say it is here or it is there? How can I say it has a form or it is formless? I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. As the space inside a jar is identical to the space outside, so is the self identical in all things. There is no inside and no outside for the one who has shaken off the dream. I am the one, unmoving and free. Waking, dreaming, and deep sleep do not exist in me. I am the 4th, the unsetting sun. There is no mother, no father, no wife, and no child. There is no birth and no death. There is no mind and no delusion. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. Some seek non-duality, others seek duality. They do not know the truth, which is the same in both, and which is free from both duality and non-duality. How can it be said that the self is manifest? How can it be said that the self is unmanifest? It has no color, no form, and no limbs. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. There is no bondage and no liberation. There is no purity and no impurity. There is no union and no separation. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. The self is like the sky, all-pervading and pure. How can there be any beginning or end for that? It is neither this nor that. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. How can it be said that the self is many? How can it be said that the self is one? It has no attributes and no lack of attributes. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. The self is always free, always pure, always unmoving. How then can there be bondage or release? I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. There is no form and no formless. There is no inside and no outside. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. I am the self, there is no doubt. Why do you imagine a this or a that? Pure awareness is my only nature. I am like the sky, homogeneous and unmoving. Neither form nor formless, neither inside nor outside. The self is not a second thing. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. How can it be said that the self is many? How can it be said that the self is one? It has no attributes and no lack of attributes. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. The self is not the body, and it is not the mind. It is not the senses, and it is not the breath. It is not being, and it is not non-being. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. Why do you imagine the senses to be mine or the objects to be others? The I is the shoreless awareness. It has no windows and no walls. The universe, composed of the 5 elements, is like the water in a mirage. I am the one, the stainless one. To whom shall I bow? I have no body, no birth, no mind, and no death. I have no sense organs to be gratified or denied. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. There is no high and no low. There is no inside and no outside. The self is like the sky without any parts. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. Brahman is the only truth. There is no doubt about this. Why do you still look for happiness as if it were a fruit on a tree? The self is the nectar, homogeneous and unmoving. Where there is no I and no you, where there is no world and no God, that is the state of nirvana. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. There is no union and no separation. There is no samadhi to be entered and no distraction to be feared. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. You have no color, no form, and no parts. You are the truth that is beyond purity and impurity. Why do you weep, O mind? Be happy. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. I do not practice yoga, nor do I practice inquiry into distinctions. Why do you speak to me of union or discrimination? I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. There is no concentration for me, for I am the object of all concentration. There is no absorption for me, for I am already the absolute. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. How can I say oneness? How can I say duality? Both are ripples in the mind. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. There is no knowledge and no ignorance. There is no path and no destination. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. I have no caste and no stage of life. I am not a Brahmin and I am not a king. Why do you speak to me of duties or social roles? I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. There is no father, no mother, and no family. There is no birth and no death for the one who has shaken off the dream. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. I am neither pure nor impure. I am neither virtuous nor sinful. I am neither bound nor released. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. I am not male and I am not female. I am neither of these, nor am I some third thing between them. I am the pure and undivided self, beyond every name and form. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. If I am the unmoving sky, all-pervading and pure, how can I say I come or I go? How can I say I stand or I sit? The eye has no coordinates in space, yet the body is seen to move through the streets. I am always free from action, for I am the nectar of knowledge. Why do you speak of good deeds and evil deeds? Can the sunlight be made holy by a temple or filthy by a gutter? The mind is like the wind, blowing where it will. The body is like a cloud, taking forms and vanishing. I am the sky, untouched by the wind and the cloud. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. Where there is no objective world and no subjective mind, where the very idea of knowing has been swallowed, that is my natural state. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. Some people seek concentration. They want to stop the mind. They do not know that the self is eternally still. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. There is no Veda, no world, no God and no sacrifice. There is no instruction and no master. I am the nectar of knowledge, homogeneous and unmoving. A word here before we move on about what follows. The verses that come next belong not to the first chapter, but to the 8th and final chapter of the Avadhuta Gita. That chapter circles back to the name itself, to the word Avadhuta, and unpacks it letter by letter. It reads almost like a coda, a formal accounting of everything the preceding chapters have dissolved. Christopher has placed it here as a kind of gathering, together, a way of letting the name resonate after the teaching. That is a literary choice, not a canonical one, and it is worth knowing the distinction. The student asks, what is an Avadhuta? Is it a man who wears no clothes? Is it a man who lives in the woods? Or is the name itself a secret door? The letter A stands for being free from the snares of hope. It signifies one who is pure from the beginning, middle, and end, and who dwells eternally in bliss. The syllable VA stands for the casting off of all latent tendencies. It signifies one who lives in the present, free from the disease of speech and thought. The syllable DHU stands for the limbs grey with dust. It signifies one whose mind has been shaken clean, who is free from the fever of health and the fear of disease. The syllable TA stands for the constant contemplation of truth. It signifies one who is free from the darkness of ego and the heaviness of ignorance. And with that last letter, the name closes around its own meaning. What it names cannot be named, but the attempt is itself an act of recognition, the tradition bowing to the one who has shaken off even the tradition. The chapter of the first teaching, though, does not end in etymology. It ends where it began, in the unmoving which was never disturbed. The closing movement of the first patala returns one more time to that image of the sky, the most patient metaphor in the Advaita vocabulary, because the sky neither acquires the clouds that cross it nor is diminished when they clear. Here, in the narrator's own words rather than in verse, is how that arrives. What remains when the last word has been spoken is not a void, because it witnesses the void, and not a fullness, because there is nothing outside it to complete. It is not existence, because existence is still a category the mind produces. It is simply that. The eye has expanded until there are no shores left. The song has reached the frequency where sound and silence are the same. Here ends the song of the unbound.